The massive chamber stretched far beyond what human eyes could easily measure. Crystalline walls rose up like frozen waterfalls, catching and bending light from the artificial star that hung in the center of the room. Commander Ji-won Kim sat in the small human section, her uniform crisp and her face carefully neutral. Next to her, Ambassador Sun-Ho Lee adjusted his tie for the third time in 10 minutes. Around them, the other species filled their designated areas. The Vorthak delegation occupied the largest section, their gray-scaled bodies gleaming under the strange light. Their leader, Counselor Vexthar, sat on a throne-like chair that seemed to be carved from a single piece of black stone. His yellow eyes swept across the chamber with obvious satisfaction. The insectoid Thys buzzed quietly among themselves, their compound eyes reflecting the light like tiny mirrors. Their representative, a creature the size of a human but covered in dark chitin, clicked its mandibles in what might have been approval or hunger. Ji-won could never tell with the Thys. Near the back, the molten delegation glowed with their own inner heat. Their silicon-based bodies looked like living lava sculptures, constantly shifting and flowing. They rarely spoke, but when they did, the chamber's temperature rose by several degrees. Other species filled the remaining spaces. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Ji-won's mind struggled to process their forms. All of them had one thing in common. They looked down at the human delegation with barely concealed contempt. "The council will come to order," Vexthar announced, his voice carrying easily through the vast space without any visible amplification. The various conversations died away instantly. "We gathered today to address the matter of the newcomers." Ji-won felt her jaw tighten. Newcomers. Humans had been part of galactic society for 15 years now, ever since the first contact mission reached Alpha Centauri and found the Vorthak mining station there. 15 years of careful diplomacy, trade agreements, and cultural exchange. But to the Council, humanity was still just the newcomers. The species calling themselves humans, Vexthar continued, have enjoyed the benefits of galactic society without contributing their proper share. This cannot continue. Ambassador Sun-Ho Lee leaned forward slightly, but Ji-won could see the tension in his shoulders. They had both suspected this was coming. The signs had been there for months. Delayed responses to human trade requests, canceled cultural exchanges, and increasingly cold treatment at diplomatic functions. "The Council has reviewed the human contribution to galactic civilization," said Counselor Thys, their voice a strange harmony of clicking sounds that the universal translator turned into words. "It is insufficient." Ji-won watched as a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. Charts and graphs appeared, showing human population, resource output, and military capability. The numbers were accurate as far as they went, but she knew they didn't tell the whole story. "Humans claim to control 12 star systems," Vexthar said, gesturing toward the display. "Yet their contribution to the galactic economy is barely measurable. Their military consists of exploration vessels and a few patrol craft. They have no significant manufacturing base, no advanced technology to offer, and no strategic value." The words stung because they were partially true. Humanity's public face was indeed modest. The exploration ships were real, the small patrol fleet was real, and the limited industrial output was real. But there were things the Council didn't know about, things that even Ji-won and Sun-Ho weren't fully briefed on. "Therefore," Vexthar announced, his voice taking on a formal tone that made Ji-won's blood run cold, "the Council has voted to establish a tributary relationship with the human species." The chamber fell silent except for the quiet humming of the artificial star overhead. Ji-won felt her heart rate increase, but she kept her expression neutral. Next to her, Ambassador Sun-Ho Lee's hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly his knuckles were white. "The terms are as follows," Vexthar continued, clearly enjoying the moment. "First, the human homeworld will provide 30% of its annual resource output to the Council, to be distributed among member species according to established protocols." Ji-won did quick math in her head. 30% of Earth's resources would mean massive shortages, rationing, and economic collapse. It would also mean stripping the planet of materials needed for humanity's growing space infrastructure. "Second," Vexthar said, "the human species will provide 10 million individuals for relocation to Council-controlled labor colonies. These individuals will serve terms of 20 standard years with the possibility of extension based on performance. 10 million people." Ji-won thought of her younger brother back on Earth, her parents, her childhood friends. The council was talking about slavery, though they would never use that word. They preferred terms like labor reallocation and productive integration. Third, Vexthar's voice grew even more satisfied. All human military assets will be placed under council oversight. Human vessels will carry council observers, and no human ship will be constructed or deployed without council approval. That was the killing blow. Without independent military capability, humanity would be completely at the mercy of the council's whims. They would be defenseless against any species that decided to expand into human territory. Fourth and finally, Vexthar said, human space travel will be limited to designated trade routes under council supervision. Exploration beyond authorized areas will be forbidden. Jiwan felt something cold settle in her stomach. The council wasn't just demanding tribute. They were talking about the complete subjugation of humanity. They wanted to turn humans into a client species, barely above the level of livestock. These terms are non-negotiable, Vexthar announced. They are based on standard council protocols for species integration. The Catherians accepted similar terms 50 years ago, and they have prospered under council guidance. Jiwan knew about the Catherians. They had once been a proud independent species with their own stellar empire. Now they were essentially indentured servants, their homeworld stripped bare, their people scattered across council territories as laborers and technicians. The council called it prosperity. Jiwan called it cultural extinction. The council is generous, said one of the molten representatives, their voice like rocks grinding together. Lesser species have been given harsher terms. Indeed, agreed Councillor Thys. The humans should be grateful for this opportunity to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. Ambassador, Sunholi finally found his voice. Honored councillors, he said, standing slowly. Surely these terms can be discussed. Humanity values our relationship with the council, but there is nothing to discuss. Vexthar cut him off. The council has made its decision. The only question remaining is whether humanity will accept these terms peacefully, or whether enforcement will be necessary. The threat was clear. Accept slavery or face military action from the combined forces of 12 advanced civilizations. Jiwan looked around the chamber at the alien faces, seeing satisfaction, boredom, and casual indifference. To them, this was just business as usual. You have 30 standard days to prepare your response, Vexthar announced. The council will reconvene at that time to hear humanity's acceptance of these terms. Not negotiation. Not discussion. Acceptance. As the chamber began to empty, Jiwan sat in her chair and watched the alien delegations file out. Most ignored the human section entirely. A few glanced over with what might have been pity. The Thys representative paused to look directly at her, mandibles clicking in what the translator rendered as amusement. 30 days, Vexthar repeated as he passed the human section. Do not waste them. Commander Jiwan Kim stood up slowly, her military training keeping her movements precise and controlled. Next to her, Ambassador Sunholi gathered his papers with shaking hands. What do we do now? He whispered. Jiwan looked at the empty chamber, thinking of Earth and the billions of humans who had no idea what had just been decided about their future. She thought of her oath as an officer, her duty to protect humanity from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now we go home, she said quietly, and we give them our answer. The emergency session room deep beneath Geneva was built to survive anything short of a direct nuclear strike. Steel and concrete surrounded the circular table, where Earth's most powerful leaders now sat in grim silence. The air recycling system hummed quietly overhead, but it couldn't clear the tension that filled the space like smoke. President Do-Hyun Nam sat at the head of the table, his usually calm face showing lines of stress that hadn't been there a week ago. To his right, General Minho Park reviewed a tablet filled with classified data, his scarred hands moving with practiced efficiency. The old soldier had seen 3 wars before humanity reached the stars, and his gray eyes held the cold calculation of a man who understood exactly what they were facing. Tell me again, President Nam said quietly, exactly what they demanded. Commander Ji-won Kim stood near the large display screen, her uniform still crisp despite the 20-hour flight back from Nexus Prime. 30% of Earth's resources annually, 10 million people for their labor colonies, complete military oversight, and restricted travel beyond approved trade routes. Slavery, said Dr. Yoonji Choi from her seat across the table. The chief scientific advisor was a small woman with steel-gray hair, but her voice carried absolute authority when she spoke about galactic politics. They're demanding we become slaves. Admiral Hyeri Yoon leaned back in her chair, her dark eyes fixed on the star charts displayed on the wall screens. The fleet commander was younger than most people in the room, but she had earned her position through brilliant tactical thinking and an almost supernatural ability to predict enemy movements. "What's their timeline?" she asked. 30 days from yesterday, Ji-won replied. Then they expect us back at Nexus Prime to formally accept their terms. Colonel Jae-hyun Seo laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. The Special Forces commander was built like a weapon, compact, efficient, and dangerous. His teams had been running classified missions in the outer systems for years, and he knew things about galactic military capabilities that would terrify most civilians. "Except," he said, "like we have a choice." "We always have a choice," General Park said without looking up from his tablet. "The question is whether we're willing to pay the price for it." President Nam turned to Dr. Choi. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" The scientist activated her own display, and holographic representations of various alien warships appeared above the table. The Vorthak have the largest fleet, approximately 800 combat vessels ranging from frigate class to dreadnought class. Their technology is about 50 years ahead of our public specifications. "Public specifications," Admiral Yoon repeated with a slight smile. "The Thais prefer smaller, faster ships with heavy automation," Dr. Choi continued. "They can field about 300 vessels, but each ship carries more firepower than its size would suggest. The Molten use living ships, grown rather than built. Their vessels can repair damage in real time and are extremely difficult to destroy permanently." "Combined fleet strength?" President Nam asked. "Conservative estimate? 3,000 combat vessels across all Council species. They could glass Earth's surface in a matter of hours if they committed their full forces." The room fell silent. Even Colonel Seo's expression grew serious. 3,000 ships was an overwhelming force by any conventional measure. General Park finally looked up from his tablet. "Dr. Choi, what assumptions are those numbers based on?" The scientist paused, understanding the real question behind his words. "Those numbers assume we would fight them conventionally, ship to ship, fleet to fleet, using technology they know we possess." "And what do they know we possess?" Dr. Choi smiled for the first time since entering the room. 12 exploration vessels, 43 patrol craft, 6 freight haulers, and 2 hospital ships. Total combat capability, essentially zero by galactic standards. "Essentially zero," Admiral Yoon repeated. "I like that phrase." President Nam stood and walked to the wall display showing Earth's blue marble hanging in space. "General Park, tell me about Project Olympus." The old soldier's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Project Olympus has been operational for 12 years since 2 years after first contact. Current status, fully deployed and ready for activation. Numbers? Classified at your level and above, sir, but sufficient for our needs." Colonel Seo leaned forward. "What about Terra Defense Initiative?" 93% completion, General Park replied. "Final systems come online in 18 days, well within our deadline." President Nam returned to his seat. "I want details." "All of them." General Park touched his tablet and the wall displays changed. Instead of alien ships, they now showed what looked like ordinary human cargo vessels, mining platforms, and civilian space stations scattered throughout human space. "When we made first contact," the general began, "some people celebrated. They thought we'd found friends among the stars. Others, like me, wondered what would happen if those friends turned out to be enemies." The display zoomed in on one of the cargo ships. As it rotated, hidden weapon ports became visible, camouflaged as loading bays and sensor arrays. "Every cargo vessel we've built for the past decade carries military-grade weapons and shielding. Every mining platform has concealed missile batteries. Every civilian space station can become a fortress at a moment's notice." Dr. Choi was staring at the display with obvious surprise. "How did I not know about this?" "Because your job was to study them," Admiral Yoon said. "Our job was to prepare for them." The display changed again, showing sleek vessels that looked nothing like the clunky human ships the galaxy knew about. These were angular, predatory, and obviously built for war. "The stealth fleet," Colonel Seo said with satisfaction. "How many?" "Enough," General Park replied. "Built in hidden shipyards in the outer system. using technology we've developed independently. The Council thinks we're decades behind them technologically. In some areas, they're right. In others, we've been very creative, Dr. Choi finished, beginning to understand. President Nam studied the images of hidden weapons and secret ships. What about personnel? Every human in space has military training, Colonel Seo reported. Civilians, traders, scientists, diplomats, all of them. We've been preparing our people for 15 years. Preparing them for what exactly? President Nam asked. General Park's smile was cold as winter. For the day when our galactic neighbors decided we looked like easy prey. Admiral Yoon activated another display, this one showing star maps with red dots scattered throughout Council space. We've been mapping their systems, their defenses, their patrol routes. They think our exploration ships are just curious humans poking around. They have no idea we've been conducting reconnaissance. How much do we know? President Nam asked. Everything, Dr. Choi said, her voice filled with growing amazement. You've been gathering intelligence on every Council species for over a decade. Knowledge is the greatest weapon, General Park said. We know where their shipyards are, where their command centers are located, how their communication networks operate. Most importantly, we know how they think. Colonel Seo pulled up tactical analyses. They're used to fighting other advanced civilizations with similar technology and tactics. They expect formal declarations of war, massed fleet actions, and conventional military objectives. What they don't expect, Admiral Yoon continued, is an enemy that learned warfare from studying Earth's history. Guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, and the kind of strategic thinking that comes from being the underdog. President Nam looked around the table at his advisors. Are you telling me we can actually fight the entire Galactic Council? We can do more than fight them, General Park said quietly. We can win. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. Instead of despair, there was something else. Something that might have been hope or determination or simple human stubbornness. What do you need from me? President Nam asked. Authorization to proceed with full deployment, Admiral Yoon said, and a decision on how we want to respond to their ultimatum. President Nam stood again, looking once more at the image of Earth on the wall screen. Somewhere up there, beyond the blue sky and white clouds, alien races were planning to enslave his species. They thought humans were weak, defenseless, and helpless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Do it, he said quietly. Full deployment. And start preparing our response. What kind of response? Colonel Seo asked. President Nam's smile was every bit as cold as General Park's had been. The kind that will make them wish they had never heard of humanity. Captain Soman Kang floated in zero gravity near the observation deck of what appeared to be a simple cargo hauler named Peaceful Trader. The name was painted in faded letters on the hull, and to any passing observer, the ship looked exactly like what it claimed to be, an aging freight vessel carrying supplies. Between human colonies, the reality was very different, Captain, came the voice of her communications officer through the internal speakers. We're receiving the activation codes now. Soman pushed off from the wall and glided toward the bridge. Around her, the ship's true nature began to reveal itself. Panels that had looked like storage compartments slid open to expose weapon controls. The cramped cargo bay expanded as false walls retracted, revealing rows of military hardware. What had seemed like a civilian crew of 12 was actually a combat team of 40, emerging from hidden compartments throughout the vessel. All stations report ready. Captain? Said Lieutenant Commander Boram Jin, her first officer. The woman's calm voice couldn't quite hide her excitement. They had trained for this moment for 7 years. Soman settled into the captain's chair and activated the secure communication system. Around her, displays that had shown shipping manifests and cargo inventories now revealed tactical information, enemy fleet positions, and strike coordinates. This is Cargo 7 to Fleet Control, she said into her headset, requesting confirmation of activation order. The response came immediately. Cargo 7, you are authorized for full combat deployment. Execute Plan Omega on my mark. Plan Omega. Soman felt a chill of anticipation. Every human ship captain in space had memorized the details, but none of them had ever expected to use it. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of vessels. The mining ship Honest Work was shedding its disguise near the edge of Council territory, revealing missile arrays that could crack a moon. The research vessel Deep Thinker was powering up weapons that could turn an enemy dreadnought into scrap metal in seconds. 3 light-years away, Lieutenant Taehyun-oh was leading his Marine squad through what looked like a routine training exercise on the surface of a barren moon. His men moved with the fluid precision of soldiers who had drilled together for years. But today felt different. Today, the training rounds in their weapons had been replaced with live ammunition. Squad leaders, "Report status," Taehyun said into his comm unit. "Alpha Squad ready for deployment," came the first response. "Bravo Squad standing by." "Charlie Squad locked and loaded, sir." Taehyun smiled grimly. His men thought they were conducting another exercise, but the sealed orders in his pocket told a different story. In 6 hours, they would board what appeared to be a civilian transport and head for Council space. Their mission was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. Meanwhile, Engineer Yeji Lim was deep inside what the galaxy knew as Human Trade Station 7, a modest facility that supposedly handled cargo transfers between human and alien merchants. She stood before a massive control panel that didn't appear on any public blueprints of the station. "Primary weapon systems show green across the board," she reported to the technician beside her. "Secondary arrays are at 97%. The disguise protocols are holding to any external scan. We still look like a simple trading post." The technician, a young man named Kyung who had been recruited straight from the military academy, stared at the readings with obvious awe. "I knew the station was more than it appeared, but this is what we've been building for 15 years, Yeji said. "Every station, every outpost, every installation that humans have constructed in space. They all have secrets." She activated another display, showing the locations of dozens of human facilities throughout the galaxy. To alien observers, they were harmless civilian structures, trading posts, research stations, communication relays. In reality, each one was a hidden fortress, armed and ready to turn Council territory into a battlefield. Back on the bridge of Peaceful Trader, Captain Somin Kang was reviewing the final mission briefings with her senior staff. The holographic display showed star charts that no Council species had ever seen, detailed maps of their home systems, complete with defensive positions, patrol schedules, and strategic vulnerabilities. Intelligence reports that the Vorthak home fleet maintains a standard patrol pattern, she explained to her officers. 16-hour cycles, predictable routes, minimal overlap in coverage zones. They've been using the same pattern for 30 years. 30 years, repeated her tactical officer with amazement. They really don't expect anyone to challenge them. Why would they? Someone asked. As far as they know, no species has ever successfully resisted Council demands. They think we're just another primitive culture that will fall in line. Her weapons officer, a veteran named Minseo Park, studied the tactical data with professional interest. Their ships are powerful, but they're designed for fleet-on-fleet combat. Big, heavily armored, lots of firepower, but also slow and predictable. What about our ships? Asked the navigation officer. Solman smiled. Fast, stealthy, and very, very angry. Commander Jihoon Han was having a similar conversation aboard his intelligence vessel, currently disguised as a diplomatic courier. His ship had been gathering information in Council space for 3 months, posing as a routine diplomatic mission. The aliens they had encountered treated them with polite condescension, never suspecting that every conversation was being recorded and analyzed. Their communication networks are completely unprotected, he explained to his team. They don't encrypt military frequencies because they can't imagine anyone would dare to intercept them. We've been listening to their fleet communications for weeks. His intelligence specialist, a sharp-eyed woman named Jisoo, pulled up intercepts from the past few days. They're not even discussing the ultimatum to humanity as a military matter. The Vorthak High Command is treating it as a simple administrative action. Administrative, Jihoon repeated. They think conquering us is just paperwork. Throughout human space, the transformation continued. What the galaxy saw as humanity's modest presence was revealing itself to be something far more significant. The small patrol fleet was actually a network of disguised warships. The limited industrial base was producing weapons and equipment at a rate that would have shocked Council observers. On Earth itself, General Minho Park stood in a command center that officially didn't exist, watching displays that showed the deployment of forces the galaxy didn't know humanity possessed. Red dots across the star map indicated human assets moving into position ships that had spent years Appearing harmless were shedding their disguises and preparing for war. Phase 1 deployment is 92% complete, reported his aide. All concealed weapons platforms are online. The stealth fleet reports ready for combat operations. The general nodded. For 15 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Every ship built, every facility constructed, every person trained. All of it had been done with one possibility in mind. The possibility that their galactic neighbors would eventually decide that humans looked like easy prey. What about the special operations teams? He asked. Lieutenant Tai Hyuno's Marines are in position near Vorthak space. Similar teams are deployed near all primary council worlds. They're ready to execute simultaneous strikes on command. General Park studied the tactical display, seeing decades of careful planning coming together. The council thought they were dealing with a helpless species that had stumbled into space travel. They were about to discover that humanity had been studying warfare for thousands of years before they ever reached the stars. Send the final authorization codes to all units, he ordered. Operation begins in 18 hours. Captain Somin Kang received the authorization aboard Peaceful Trader, now revealed as the heavy cruiser Righteous Fury. Around her, the ship hummed with barely contained power. Weapons that could shatter asteroids were charged and ready. Engines that could outrun anything in council space were warming up. She looked at the star chart showing her target, a Vorthak border patrol station that had been monitoring human shipping for years. The aliens manning that station thought they were watching over helpless cargo haulers and passenger transports. Tomorrow, they would learn what humans really thought about ultimatums. Commander Ji-won Kim stood at the window of the human diplomatic shuttle as it approached Nexus Prime. The crystalline station hung in space like a jewel, exactly as she remembered it from 30 days ago. But everything else had changed. Behind her, Ambassador Sun Ho Lee sat quietly reviewing the single data pad that contained humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. His hands were steady now, no longer shaking as they had been during that first terrible meeting. The past month had changed both of them. Approaching Docking Bay 7, announced the shuttle pilot, a young woman named Haeyeon who wore the uniform of a civilian transport service. To any observer, she was simply a hired pilot ferrying diplomats. In reality, she was Lieutenant Commander Haeun Choi, and the civilian shuttle carried enough firepower to level a city block. Any word from the fleet? Ji-won asked quietly. Haeun touched her earpiece briefly. All units report ready. Captain Somin Kang confirms that Righteous Fury is in position near Vorthak Prime. The other strike groups are holding at their assigned coordinates. Ji-won nodded. Across the galaxy, human forces were waiting in the shadows. Ships that had spent years pretending to be harmless cargo haulers were now revealed as predators, lurking just outside sensor range of every major council world. They have no idea we're out there, Sunho said, looking up from his data pad. Even now they think we're coming here to surrender. The shuttle docked with a barely perceptible bump. Through the airlock, Ji-won could see the same alien guards who had been present 30 days ago. They looked bored, as if this was just another routine diplomatic meeting. Remember, Ji-won said as they prepared to disembark. Stay calm. Let them think they've won until the very end. The walk through the station's corridors felt different this time. 30 days ago, Ji-won had felt like a mouse walking through a house full of cats. Now she felt like something else entirely, something with claws of its own. Alien beings passed them in the hallways, paying little attention to the human delegation. A group of Thys chittered among themselves as they walked by, their compound eyes reflecting contempt. A massive molten representative glowed with inner heat, its silicon body flowing like living lava as it moved toward the council chambers. None of them seemed concerned about the humans. Why should they be? The ultimatum had been clear. The deadline had passed, and now the primitives were coming to submit as expected. The great chamber looked exactly as Ji-won remembered it. The same crystalline walls, the same artificial star hanging in the center, the same arrangement of alien delegations in their designated areas. But this time she noticed details she had missed before. The locations of security stations, the positions of guards, the sight lines from the speaking platform. Counselor Vexthar sat on his black stone throne, yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction as the human delegation took their seats. Around him, the other council members seemed equally pleased. This was going to be a simple formality. the acceptance of another species into tributary status. "Welcome back," Vexthar announced, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. "I trust you have had adequate time to consider the Council's generous offer." Generous offer. Jiwan kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a cold anger building. 30% of Earth's resources, 10 million people enslaved, complete military oversight, and restricted travel. The Council called this generosity. "The Council is eager to hear humanity's response," said Councillor Thess, mandibles clicking in what might have been anticipation. "We have already begun preparations for the integration process." Integration. Another word that meant slavery, spoken with the casual indifference of a species that had done this many times before. Other council members began to speak, discussing the practical details of humanity's subjugation, where the human laborers would be deployed, how Earth's resources would be divided, which council species would oversee human space travel. They talked about 10 billion human lives as if they were discussing cargo shipments. "The tribute collection will begin within 60 days of acceptance," announced a representative from the crystalline Zanari species. "Our transport fleets are already being prepared. Human military assets will be transferred to council control immediately," added a delegate from the aquatic tidal empire. "We cannot risk any complications during the transition period." Ambassador Sun Ho Lee stood slowly. "Honored councilors," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Humanity has indeed considered your offer very carefully." A ripple of satisfaction passed through the alien delegations. Finally, the humans were ready to accept reality. "We have discussed every aspect of your proposed terms," Sun Ho continued. "We have consulted with our leaders, our military commanders, and our people." Vexthar leaned forward on his throne, yellow eyes bright with anticipation. "And what is humanity's decision?" Commander Jiwon Kim rose from her seat and walked to the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. Her boots echoed against the crystal floor, the only sound in the vast space. Every alien eye was focused on her, waiting for the words of surrender they expected to hear. She reached the platform and turned to face the assembled council. Hundreds of alien beings looked down at her from their elevated positions, representatives of 12 powerful civilizations that controlled most of the known galaxy. They saw a single human woman alone and defenseless, about to deliver her species into bondage. "Councilors," Jiwon said, her voice calm and professional. 30 days ago, you presented humanity with an ultimatum. You demanded tribute laborers and complete submission to council authority." "Yes," Vexthar said impatiently. "We are aware of our own demands." "What is humanity's response?" Jiwon reached into her uniform pocket and withdrew a small data pad, the same one Ambassador Sunho had been reviewing on the shuttle. She held it up for the assembled aliens to see. "This contains our official response," she announced. "Read it," commanded Councillor Thess. "Let the Council hear humanity's acceptance of its proper place in galactic civilization." Jiwon activated the data pad and looked down at the single line of text displayed there. She had read it a dozen times during the journey to Nexus Prime, but the words still sent a thrill through her. "The response is brief," she said, looking up at the expectant alien faces. "It reads, humanity respectfully declines the Council's generous offer." The chamber fell completely silent. For a moment, not even the artificial star's humming could be heard. Then slowly the silence was broken by what might have been laughter from the alien delegations. "Declines?" Vexthar repeated, his voice filled with amusement. "I'm afraid there has been a misunderstanding. The Council's offer was not a request. It was a command." "We understand that," Jiwon replied calmly. "Then you understand that refusal is not an option," said the molten representative, its voice like grinding stone. "The Council has the power to take what it demands." "You're welcome to try," Jiwon said. More laughter echoed through the chamber, this time louder and more contemptuous. The idea of humans resisting the combined might of the Council was apparently hilarious to most of the alien species present. Vexthar rose from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow across the speaking platform. "Little human," he said, his voice now cold with menace. "You seem to have forgotten your place. Your species controls 12 systems and perhaps 100 ships. The Council commands 3,000 worlds and fleets that could turn your homeworld into ash." "That does sound impressive," Jiwon agreed. "Then you withdraw your refusal?" Thais asked, mandibles clicking eagerly. Jiwon looked around the chamber at the alien faces, seeing confidence, contempt, and the casual cruelty of predators discussing their prey. They had no idea what was waiting for them in the darkness between the stars. "No," she said simply. "The refusal stands." The laughter died away, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. Vexthar's yellow eyes blazed with anger, and other council members began speaking in harsh alien languages, their words needing no translation. "Very well," Vexthar said finally. "If humanity chooses to resist, then humanity will be crushed. Our fleets will move against your worlds within the day." "Actually," Jiwon said, touching her own communications device, "I don't think they will." At that moment, every communication panel in the chamber came alive with incoming signals. Alarms began to sound as council monitoring stations throughout the galaxy reported the same impossible thing. Unknown human vessels were appearing near every major council world, lots of them. The alarms filled the great chamber with their urgent wailing, echoing off the crystalline walls until the sound became almost unbearable. Emergency lights bathed the assembled council members in harsh red illumination as communication panels throughout the chamber flickered. "With incoming reports, Commander." Jiwon Kim stood calmly at the speaking platform, watching as chaos erupted around her. Alien delegates rushed to their communication stations, their voices rising in urgent conversations with their home fleets. The confident atmosphere of 30 seconds ago had vanished completely. "Impossible," Counselor Vexthar snarled, his yellow eyes blazing as he received reports from Vorthak space. "Our sensors show nothing. There are no human ships in our systems." "Check again," G1 suggested mildly. A Thys communications officer chittered frantically to Counselor Thys, who responded with sharp clicks of anger. "Our border stations report multiple contacts appearing near the home fleet, but our deep space sensors detected nothing. Approaching." "Because they were already there," G1 said. The massive molten representatives form pulsed, with agitated heat as information flowed through their silicon-based neural networks. 17 unknown vessels have appeared within our defensive perimeter. This should not be possible." "Your defensive perimeter," Jiwon observed, "has some holes in it." More reports flooded in from across council space. The aquatic tidal empire's underwater cities were reporting human ships in their ocean systems. The crystalline Zanari had detected vessels near their manufacturing worlds. Every major council species was suddenly facing the same impossible situation. Human warships had appeared throughout their territory without warning. "How?" Vexthar demanded, his voice shaking with rage and confusion. "How did you get ships past our sensors, past our patrols, past our defenses?" "Carefully," Jiwon replied. Ambassador Sunho Lee had remained seated during the chaos, but now he stood and walked to join Jiwon at the speaking platform. His earlier nervousness was completely gone, replaced by the calm confidence of a man who held all the winning cards. "For 15 years, Sunho said, addressing the assembled council, "you have watched human ships travel through your space. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, research vessels, diplomatic couriers, hundreds of them moving freely along your trade routes. Civilian ships," spat a delegate from the insectoid hive collective. "Harmless merchants and explorers, were they?" Sunho asked. On cue, the communication systems throughout the chamber received a new signal. The main display screen activated, showing the image of a woman in a crisp military uniform standing on what was obviously a warship's bridge. "This is Admiral Hyeri Yoon of the Human Defense Fleet," the woman announced. "I am speaking to you from the bridge of the Dreadnought Defiant, currently positioned in orbit around Vorthak Prime." The chamber fell silent except for the continued wailing of alarms. Even the emergency lights seemed to flicker in response to the shock that filled the air. "That is impossible," Vexthar whispered. "Vorthak Prime is the most heavily defended world in council space. Nothing could approach undetected." Admiral Yoon smiled on the screen. "Nothing you would recognize as a threat." The cargo hauler. "Peaceful Progress has been making routine deliveries to your outer system for 3 years. Today, Peaceful Progress revealed its true identity. The display changed, showing a ship that looked nothing like the aging cargo hauler the Vorthak had grown accustomed to seeing. Instead, a sleek predator of a vessel hung in space, its weapons trained on the planet below. "Similarly," the Admiral continued, "the research vessel Curious Mind has been studying your defensive systems for 2 years. The passenger transport safe journey has been mapping your patrol routes. The diplomatic courier-friendly message has been monitoring your communications. More images appeared on the screen, ship after ship revealing their true nature as military vessels. What had seemed like humanity's modest civilian presence in Council space was actually a massive intelligence and infiltration operation. "You sent soldiers there," Counselor Thus said, mandibles clicking with what might have been fear. Commander Ji-won Kim looked up at the insectoid representative with something that might have been pity. "We sent soldiers everywhere." The communication panel crackled again, this time with a new voice. "This is Captain Soman Kang, commanding the strike group in Thesu space. We have weapons locked on your primary hive worlds." Another voice followed immediately. "Captain Doyen Huang, Molten System. Your forge worlds are within range of our missiles." The reports continued as human commanders checked in from throughout Council space. Captain after captain, ship after ship, all of them positioned near vital Council targets. President Do-Yun Nam's voice cut through the chaos, broadcasting from Earth itself. "Members of the Galactic Council," he said, his tone formal and diplomatic despite the circumstances. 30 days ago you made certain demands of humanity. You asked for tribute, for our people, and for our submission. The alien delegates listened in stunned silence as the human leader continued. "You assumed we were weak because we appeared peaceful. You thought we were defenseless because we built cargo ships instead of battleships. You believed we would submit because other species had done so before us." Vexthar found his voice. "Your threats mean nothing. Even if you have ships in our systems, you are still outnumbered 100 to 1. Council fleets will destroy you." "Will they?" President Nam asked. "Admiral Yoon, please show the Council what our cargo ships are actually carrying." The main display changed again, this time showing tactical readouts from across Council space. Weapon signatures blazed like stars as disguised human vessels revealed their true firepower. Mining platforms that had operated for years in Council systems suddenly showed as armed fortresses. Space stations that had seemed like simple trading posts were revealed to be military bases. "Every human facility you allowed in your space," Admiral Yoon explained, "every ship you permitted to operate in your systems, every installation you thought was civilian infrastructure, all of it was military preparation." The numbers on the display were staggering. What the Council had believed was humanity's tiny presence in their space was actually a massive military force, positioned with surgical precision near every important target. "Impossible," whispered a delegate from the gas giant dwelling aerial collective. "The resources required, the planning, the coordination." 15 years of planning, President Nam confirmed. 15 years of preparation. "Because we learned something about the galaxy during our first contact that you apparently missed." "What?" Vexthar demanded. "That might makes right in your civilization, that the strong prey upon the weak. That peace is only possible when backed by superior force." Commander Ji-won Kim stepped forward on the speaking platform. "You want to know humanity's answer to your demands? Here it is." She paused, looking around the chamber at the alien faces that had been so confident 30 minutes ago. Fear was replacing arrogance, uncertainty was replacing contempt. "No. No," Counselor Thys repeated. "No tribute. No laborers. No submission. No Council oversight of human space. And no more ultimatums." Vexthar's voice shook with rage. "You dare threaten the Council? We have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. Ruled through fear," Ji-won said. "Through threats and ultimatums and the promise of overwhelming force. But what happens when someone refuses to be afraid?" The alarms continued to wail as more reports flooded in from across Council space. Human forces were not just present near Council worlds, they were in perfect position to cripple the Council's ability to project power throughout the galaxy. "This is terrorism," accused a representative from the Cybernetic Nexus Collective. "This is deterrence," Admiral Yoon corrected from the main screen. "For 15 years we have watched you subjugate species that couldn't defend themselves. We decided that humanity would not be one of them." President Nam's voice filled the chamber again. "The Council's ultimatum is rejected. The tribute demand is denied, and humanity hereby withdraws from all Council authority." "You cannot," Vexthar roared. "No species leaves the Council. We will hunt you across the galaxy. We will turn your worlds to ash." Commander Ji-won Kim smiled, and for the first time the expression reached her eyes. "You're welcome to try, but I should warn you, We've had 15 years to think about what we'd do if you declared war on us. And what would you do? Vexthar snarled. Win, she said simply. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in.
Humanity had not just refused the Council's demands. They had positioned themselves to defend that refusal with overwhelming force.
The species the Council had dismissed as primitive newcomers had outmaneuvered civilizations that were thousands of years older. Admiral Yoon appeared on the screen one final time. Council fleets are welcome to test our defenses, but you should know that every human ship in your space is prepared for immediate combat operations. Every human installation has been weaponized. Every human citizen has been trained for war. We spent 15 years preparing for peace, President Nam added, but we spent those same 15 years preparing for war. The choice of which one you get is entirely up to you. Commander Ji-won Kim looked up at Counselor Vexthar one last time. You asked what humanity's answer was to your demands. The answer is simple. She gestured toward the displays showing human forces positioning.